Hi, I'm Elah Hale. You're hanging out with me and Rob on Front Row Live.
Before we actually jump in to your latest single, Sports, I'm curious about your voice because your voice is like mesmerizing. So, like, what was that like discovery of your voice like for you and that artist development process like?
Thank you. Yeah, it was a little quirky. I started just I was learning guitar and I would do Hannah Montana covers basically, and they kind of sucked. My voice was not great, but I kept pushing through it. And then eventually I got vocal lessons. And I think because people like Nora Jones were really my beginning, like I really loved jazz music. That is kind of where it all started. So yeah, a combination of Hannah Montana and Nora Jones were the beginnings for me.
Would never have thought Hannah Montana.
Oh yeah, I was a huge fan.
So, as you kind of released, so I feel like you released a lot of music in this last year. And as you've kind of released a new song or an EP, like how has that creative process kind of changed for you? Just because you're gaining new experiences within each release that you do.
Yeah, for me, at the very beginning, when I was putting things out on SoundCloud, I would spend hours searching through SoundCloud and then asking someone who like put a beat up online if I could use it. And then my whole life changed going into the studio before I had even signed and working with an actual producer. It was the first time I'd done that when I was like 17, I think. And then this last year, it felt like my life changed because I could work with a producer and I didn't have to pay for it out of pocket. And it wasn't like, God, we got to get a song done in 5 hours or like, I have no more money. So I felt like, especially writing my EP, my world had completely changed. And there was no really creative process. I was just like, let's do it. Like, let's do whatever we can. And then in my current writing cycle, I've really tried to slow down and consider what's going into the song, how do I feel about it, and taking multiple days writing a song, taking a while and continuing to going back to things. I think that it's a lot more of a thought through process, which has provided me with songs that I absolutely love.
You mentioned like the EP Room 206 is like
Mm-hmm.
such a perfect debut. I feel like all tracks in this EP are just like it feels like you've been working on them for a long time and you've
Mm-hmm.
been kind of like reconstructing them and breaking them down. And what was that creative process like now that it's your first experience like being in a studio and working with
Mm-hmm.
a team? How did that change like the way that you like actually write your music?
Yeah, at the very beginning, I was still, my thing that I loved historically was that I would walk into a session and I would be like, I have no plan, I have no song ideas, like, let's just make something, let's just make magic. And that was great, but by the end of the cycle, writing up 206, I'd been working with the same people and pretty consistently. And I'd gotten into a groove where I would come in and be like, this is a really weird idea, but I think it's kind of cool. Or I'd be more okay with like being vulnerable or expressing myself. And I think that that really led to the songs that are on the EP. I think that it went from feeling like the music I was writing was superficial in a sense to genuine and thought through and really precious to me.
And as you mentioned, like being vulnerable, like I feel like your voice is, one thing that I loved about your voice is that it sounds so delicate at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that mixture of like vulnerable lyrics with like such a delicate voice, like I feel like it's hard to kind of like conquer it in a sense. Um, did you feel like it was a struggle trying to figure out like how to marinate the two when you were creating your tracks?
Yeah, I think I started in a more R&B verging on like hip hop beat world because that's what I had in SoundCloud. And I think that that lended to a very specific vocal style. And working with producers who are actually in the room with me and not just like a beat that I ripped off the internet, I actually had people think through melodies with me and think through vocal styles with me. And I think that that led to a more dynamic range. I think that encouraging myself to be more breathy and use falsetto was something that I wasn't comfortable with at first because sometimes it sounded bad and I didn't want to be embarrassed. But I definitely think that I've tried to figure out how to balance not sounding too precious, like not wanting it to be this like, ooh, this is a really sad ballad and her voice is really soft and quiet. I think that mixing up dynamics has been really important in finding, yeah, the perfect harmony between voice and lyric.
Do you feel like you discovered that during the process of the debut EP or after the process of the debut EP?
I think towards the end, and then now I feel like I've really come into my own when it comes to my voice. I think that I'm okay with things sounding bad. I think I don't need everything to be perfect all at once. And I really needed that before because I was so scared and I knew nothing about the music industry in a way, and I knew nothing about, I just felt like I had the world on my shoulders. And I was like, I need to bring people the best song I'd ever made every single time. And I think that now that I'm experimenting and sort of trying out new things, I've really learned that I could be weird with my voice or I could play with different things. And that's also cool.
So, moving forward, now that you've released Sports, how different was it for you to record and write this song in particular? And was this the same producer that you worked with on your debut EP, or was this a completely different team for you?
I worked on Sports as I was writing my EP, actually, so a while ago with
Okay.
a different producer, Stavros, in New York City. And what was fun about that session was it's just such a fun song. And I think that I I really got into it and I kind of let myself not get carried away, but really go all the way in and not get too much in my head about it. So in a way, it was a completely different team because I was working in New York City instead of in LA. And yeah, I think it led to just a really fun song.
And as far as like the production of this goes, like
Mm-hmm.
I love the sounds that you created with this song,
Mm-hmm.
because you mentioned like it is different. But whose idea was it for the sonics of the song? Was it yours, or was it the producers, or was it a mixture of the two?
I think it was a mixture of the two. It was a lot of the way I like to do things is kind of letting everyone have their moment and start their thing and then going back into the middle and collaborating. And I think that what Stavros and I really talked about was like 80s like dad, but make it cool, if that makes any sense. And I think that that really happened within the song. And then we had another producer kind of work on some of the drums for the song. And I was very much so like 80s dad, but cool, which is honestly what I'm constantly striving to make. I think that some cool 80s dad music makes me feel good.
Do you feel like this song kind of opened your eyes on like how many different things you could kind of like experiment with?
Yeah, it definitely made me feel like I can do really fun music and keep it lyrically interesting. I think that I'm often really scared that if I'm writing a fun song, it has to be like superficial or about nothing.
Hmm.
So I think that this really trained me to be like, no, you can do something cool and interesting and fun. And also like maybe you're gonna write a like 80s synth pop album. Like there you go.
I would not be opposed to that. I
Me
think
either.
I think you would nail it. Since you wrote this track while you were working on the debut EP, what made you not want to put it on the debut EP? Like, what was it about the song that you felt like this is going to be the next chapter?
I think that it felt like it was definitely a balance between the old and the new. I think that the EP, because so much of it was worked on with Daywave and Henry Nowhere, it all felt like it really existed together. And I was worried that having this like random song would stick out like a sore thumb and would also not give it kind of the respect it needed, if that makes any sense. Um, so I think that leaving it as this like middleman between the old and the new allows it to kind of be listened to and thought through. And then if I make some more fun music, it makes sense. And if I don't, it's like, okay, you got this crazy fun song. Like, I hope you love it.
It almost kind of sounds like you weren't sure about it.
I was really sure about it, but I
Uh,
think that I have a lot of songs like that are so like, how did you come up with this? Like, Sports is crazy and it's such a great song, but it also sounds so dissimilar from the stuff on the EP and the stuff I was
mhm.
making at that time. And I have another one that sounds like it's literally like a 50s doo-wop song. It's a great song. I love it. It has to come out into the world at some point. But I also don't want to just put it out and be like, surprise, here's a doo-wop song. Like, on an album with like a bunch of pop bangers and then like that song gets kind of tossed to the side.
Right,
I think that like I'm sure of things, but I want to be sure of things and give them their moment.
right. Now, the fact that you're relatively a new artist and
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of testing the waters with different styles of music, what do you think it is that, no matter which song we listen to, it kind of gives us that vibe that it's your song, that it's your material?
Mm. I feel like it's my voice. I think that for me, when it comes to other artists, I really am pulled to people who have super distinct voices. Like Phoebe Bridgers. I feel like I could
Mm,
spot Phoebe Bridgers if she was on a country song or
yeah.
on like, I don't know, doing background vocals on a Young Thug song. I feel like I'd be like, that's Phoebe Bridgers because her voice is so specific. And I think that I at least believe that I have that too. And I think it's also for me, I think I'm in the weird generation in the music industry of pushing towards more genreless music. And I
Mm,
think that as that's coming, it's like this weird 80s synth pop after this EP isn't too much of a sway because it's like everything is everything and melding into each other.
right. So, moving forward, like now that you've you released this song, you kind of mentioned that the doo-wop one. What else can fans expect, like both new and fans that have been with you since the
Hmm.
beginning of your music?
I think there's been a very fun evolution. I think that I really stand behind the music that I'm making, and there is some coming, which is exciting, but it's also just that I'm making incredible music and I'm so happy to share it. And I really feel like I've come into my own. I feel like I'm comfortable now and I'm working with people that I love. So I'm writing the best music I've ever written, which is great. It's great to feel.
That's awesome. What was for to close this off? Like, what was the most challenging part about writing sports?
What was really challenging about writing sports was, I think, making it all make sense. I think that I didn't want it to feel too much like a breakups. I like my songs to be interpreted differently or by everyone, and I think that that lends to a lot of universality. And I think that what was really challenging was finding a way to make it feel like everyone could take a piece from it because it is production wise more specific than my other songs.
Hmm, that's awesome. Well, I love sports. I love the EP. I can't.
Thank you.
Now I'm excited to listen to this doo-wop that you're talking about.
I know.
I
Thank
feel
you.
like you're gonna be I feel like you're gonna be releasing a lot of like going back to like classics,
Yeah,
which is cool.
hopefully.
Which is kind of cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Congratulations with sports. And hopefully next time we can actually do this in person.
Yeah, thank you. I can't wait.